Hello, it's May 10th, which means we have exactly 10 days before the end of the legislative session. So there's a lot of talk about whether we're going to be able to finish up all that work on time. The way that the process works for those of you that are newer is both the House and the Senate have approved bills on a variety of issues, and then the House and the Senate each appoint members to a conference committee, and those committees work together to decide what language they can both agree on, take back to their respective chamber, pass a bill, and present it to the governor. So the conference committees have started meeting. The other kind of overriding piece, though, is it's hard for a number of those committees in a budget year to work out their final resolution before they know how much money they're going to have, whether it's for taxes or education or a lot of the work that we do in Health and Human Services. So Melissa Hortman, Paul Gazelka, and Governor Walz made an agreement very early in the session that they would have those financial details, or the targets as they would refer to them, figured out by Monday of this week, previous to today, 5 days ago. And that would then allow the conference committees by next Monday, the 13th, to be able to figure out with the money that they were allocated, how they were going to spend it within those budgets. There's still no agreement on funding. There's major areas of dispute around a gas tax, about whether to extend the provider tax, which right now is imposed 2% on any healthcare services, and that's the money that's used to fund healthcare for low-income Minnesotans. So those are big issues in terms of numbers before we even look at whether we should be increasing taxes to have more revenue, or whether we should keep our revenue the same and make adjustments to spending. We also have the issue of having to respond to the federal tax bill that was passed in the late winter, or late at the end of the year 2017. So there are a lot of moving pieces, and it's going to be difficult for those conference committees to have much discussion in a meaningful way about anything other than policy until those amounts are figured out. The legislative leaders and the governor are fishing this weekend. It's the fishing opener, which of course is Mother's Day weekend, so happy Mother's Day to all of you that are mothers, and a reminder to call your mom if you're not a mother, or even if you are. So we'll see what happens. Maybe if they're on a boat fishing, that will facilitate some of these discussions. So once that amount is determined, once they decide what the total money amount budget that they have to work in, then they'll figure out how much goes to each of those departments. Then we'll go back to those conference committees to make those decisions. So, for example, our MFIP and our child care assistance issues are both in the Health and Human Services Conference Committee. They had a walkthrough of those provisions last night, so they talked about them, made sure that they understood what the differences were between the House and the Senate language, but they did not get into any specifics around what they're going to fund and what those pieces are going to be. The same thing happened last night in the Public Safety Committee met. That's where our fees and fines language is, a driver's license suspension language, but there isn't resolved yet what that'll be. So we have kind of an unusual ask for you this week. We want to make sure on the Senate side that people are hearing the importance of MFIP. There was never a hearing on MFIP in the Senate. It was heard in the House. So certainly people are familiar with the program, but it didn't have the kind of exposure that it would have if there had been a hearing on that issue. So number one, especially if you have a Republican senator, but if all of you would just contact your senator about the importance of an increase in the Minnesota Family Investment Program. There hasn't been one in 32 years. These families are really struggling. This does not even bring them to the federal poverty guideline level. So that's ask number one. If you only do one thing, please do that. Ask number two would be please call the House and thank them for their support on the Child Care Assistance Program. We want to make sure that we have a solid defense there, and the House has been marvelous about that on the MFIP issue as well. And then the third, if you happen to live in a district with a Republican senator, if you could ask 3 of your friends to also please contact your senator about the importance of an increase to the MFIP grant, that would be wonderful. There aren't a lot of groups lobbying for this. It's not an issue that there are millions of calls coming in, so it's really important that those people who care about this issue and are really mindful of how this is impacting low-income children and parents, to make sure that your voices are heard. So we have just over a week left. We'd really love in the next 4 or 5 days for senators, especially Republican senators, to be hearing how important it is to do an MFIP increase. So I'll have an update for you next week, and hopefully we'll be well on our way to getting things done. Have a wonderful weekend. Thanks.